Ever wonder why you don't have enough money in your bank account, or wondering why you have to continue to take out loans on an ongoing basis? Today's guest is going to teach you why and how to see it coming in advance. Welcome to the Ecomm Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hadley. I scaled my own brand from 0 to 8 figures in sales, and now my mission is to take it to over 9 figures. On my journey to 9 figures, I bring you unfiltered conversations with the smartest minds in e-commerce. Past guests include Kevin King, Michael E. Gerber, author of The E-Myth, and Brandon Young. Today, I am giving you the real strategies and systems. I'm pleased to welcome a powerhouse in the CPG and wellness space, Bill D'Alessandro. Bill is a 4-time founder and serial entrepreneur, and currently the VP of Corporate Development at Food Science, a leading provider of science-based wellness solutions for both humans and pets, with a strong focus on quality, innovation, and trust. Food Science has been quietly building and acquiring some of the most exciting wellness brands on the market today. So if you are thinking about acquiring brands or preparing your own for exit, or you just want to get your finances in place and understand how you can put more money in your bank account, this conversation is going to be packed with insights that you don't want to miss. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Wow, that's one heck of an intro. I'm happy to be here, Josh. Good to see you, man.
Hey, Bill, easy to, tout somebody else's, accomplishments, go through your LinkedIn profile. You and I have talked lots of times. So you've got a lot of good accomplishments. So it's easy to put something like that together for you.
Thanks, man. I've been looking forward to this. I mean, Josh, if you're a listener, Josh is like one of the most organized podcast hosts I've ever been on. Like I was invited, several months in advance. And like whole pre-questionnaires, like we are ready. This is going to be a good conversation. So I'm happy to be here, man. Good to see you.
Well, Bill, so for those that don't know you, I know you've kind of run the circuits. You've been on a lot of different podcasts as well, and you're involved in a lot of e-commerce communities. But for those that don't know you, you're kind of a coach and consultant. You work with other people, other e-commerce brands. You are running your own brand that just recently was acquired, and now you're kind of looking at acquiring other brands. So why don't you give the listeners a quick little breakdown of your recent exit that you went through and what you're doing right now?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in e-commerce since 2010 when I quit my job to start my first e-com business. To make a very complicated, long story very short, we acquired 8 different businesses over 8 years. The last one was a business called Natural Dog Company, which made supplements and grooming products, hip and joint chews, salmon oil, topical balm, shampoos, wipes, things like that. All kinds of consumables for dogs, everything except food. We bought that brand in 2018, and that brand really took off during COVID. And then in 2021, 2022, we sold the other 7 brands in the portfolio to go all in on Natural Dog Company, scaled that business well into the 8 figures. And then earlier this year, in April 2025, sold that business to Food Science, Josh, as you mentioned in the intro. And Food Science is a really interesting business. They are owned by Morgan Stanley Capital Partners, the private equity arm of the huge financial services company everyone has heard of. But Food Science is the operating company that acquired my business, Natural Dog. And we can talk a lot more about kind of how we got to that point, because that's kind of what everybody wants to do, is get acquired by a strategic. So I can talk a little bit about how to kind of prepare your business for that, what they're going to look at, the uncomfortable questions they're going to ask you so you can get ahead of them. And now I work for Food Science, and my role is VP of Corporate Development. No one knows what the heck that means. What that really means is I buy other businesses. So my job all day, every day, is to go find other pet supplements and treats brands and buy them and introduce them to Food Science and, work on putting them together with our business, because Morgan Stanley has dedicated 9 figures of capital to put behind this business to do a roll up in the pet space. So I'm in charge of making that happen. So that's sort of how I ended up in the chair here. So I've been in e-commerce for 15 years at this point, which is wild to say, and have a background in investment banking and private equity before that. So it's kind of full circle for me now being on the buy side again. So that's the brief history.
I love it. Well, you've got a wealth of experience, and I think that one of the other most important things to call out is that you've been looking under the hood of a lot of like 7, 8-figure businesses, those that you've been able to coach or consult with. And even as you're looking at acquiring other brands, like you're able to actually look and see like what's actually going on in a lot of these e-commerce brands. And Bill, my kind of hypothesis, you tell me if I'm wrong. I think there's a lot, maybe 50%. I'd be curious to hear your number. 50% of the brands probably like the revenue metrics that they're throwing out, they can tout their revenue, but like profitability is extremely low, if not non-existent. And I think you get to see that, and we're going to dive into a lot of those topics today. But give me your take. What percentage of e-commerce brands do you feel like they're going to spout out some big, maybe top line numbers? Hey, yeah, I hit 8 figures. And it's like, well, show me how much profit you're bringing in. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's so hard now. I mean, there's so much platform power between Amazon and Meta and Google. They're just siphon huge portions of the P&L off, and you really have got to be a really sharp operator now because CACs are so high. You're competing against a whole bunch of sophisticated operators, so that ads line item kind of expands to eat your whole P&L and your profit if you're not really careful. And a lot of the businesses I see, unfortunately, Josh, don't really have very much visibility into how much profit they're actually making. They might be thinking, oh, I have a 2.8x ROAS, or I have a 1.7x ROAS. Oh, 1.7x ROAS is good. I must be profitable. But they don't really go any further than that. And you go, well, a 1.7x revenue ROAS is a way to think about it. All those metrics are revenue ROAS. Well, you still got to take out of that the cost to make the product, the cost to ship the product, the cost to process the credit card, all that stuff. And you realize that, 1.7 ROAS, you're probably losing. And a lot of brands aren't thinking about it that way. And then they're also not really disciplined around looking at their P&L with a contribution margin and then kind of a fixed cost section, and like trusting their numbers. So when they get their QuickBooks file at the end of the month, that number in the QuickBooks file actually represents how they did, and they feel confident in that number, and they manage the business according to that number. That is like less than 10% of brands.
Really?
So that's actually a lot of what I do. Yeah, that's a lot of what I do with consulting clients, is try to get people to a place where they can trust their QuickBooks, right? Where their business is spitting out numbers quickly that they can trust and use to run their business. I mean, that it's so complicated, as you know, like the inventory accounting, the COGS accounting, the timing, the accrual, get it. But if you don't have it right, it's like driving with a blacked out windshield, and blacked out rear views. Like you don't know what happened. So that's, I think, really important. To answer your question, I think less than 50% of brands definitely are making more than 10% net margin. And I think less than 10% of the brands I run into, maybe less than 20, actually have clean accounting.
Okay. Well, you heard it from the master himself. So I think that is such a critical pain point in businesses. And one of the interesting things here, Bill, when you go to these e-commerce conferences, it's all about the latest and shiniest like marketing hacks. It seems like, oh, hey, you can go spin up this, you can go generate money over here or over there. But the fundamental basics of the business, accounting and getting clean books and smart tactics of how to reconcile your books, I don't think I've ever seen one of those ever in any of the e-commerce conferences I've been to. But what you're just saying is that 90% of entrepreneurs do not have clean books and actual accounting statements that they could rely on to be able to make business decisions for the future growth or success of their business. So, Bill, I'm curious, like as people come to you and they're looking for help, what do you see as like one of the red flags and the number one problem that you're helping them with right off the bat?
Yeah. So, and I think, the reason you say that, Josh, is like accounting doesn't seem sexy, right? It doesn't seem like it's going to help you grow your business. And also I think a lot of founders go, oh, I'm not an accountant. Like, oh, that's too technical for me. I'm going to hire an accounting firm or I'm going to hire a fractional CFO, and I'm just going to kind of trust the reports that come out of that. And I think kind of founders use that as an excuse to not become financially literate. But the fact of the matter is, accounting is the language of business, right? Your whole business runs on accounting. It would be like trying to say you could be an author without knowing English. Like it fundamentally, you can't do it. Everything is built on accounting. And so what I open with people is I go, you as the founder need to be accounting literate. You don't have to be accounting fluent, but you need to be accounting literate and you need to understand what's going on under the hood. You can't just get the reports from your accountant. And here's the first test. If you get a report from your accountant and you look at the bottom line net income number and you don't feel in your bones like that reflects the actual performance of the business last month, you have a problem. Because if you don't feel in your bones that reflects the business, you're not going to make decisions based on that number, right? That sum total at the bottom is the sum of everything else up the page, which means if you don't trust the bottom line, you certainly don't trust all the things that are adding up into it. So that would be the first challenge I would say for everybody that is listening. Pull up your QuickBooks, look at last month. I know we've kind of just come through Black Friday and we're looking at next year. Look at the bottom line number for last month, not even last year, just last month. And the reason I pick month is because that introduces all kinds of timing things, like what happened last month, what happened this month, et cetera. And if you don't feel like the number at the bottom of the page for last month accurately reflects how much money you made last month, we've got work to do.
Yeah, I think it's so important. And it's frankly scary. If you are in this seat, those listeners that are like, I think that's me. I think one of the most important things that you can do right now is like truly take this to heart, because I love your analogy right there. Think of becoming an author, but not knowing the English language, right? It's like, how in the world do you think you're actually going to write a book that other people would want to buy? Well, likewise, how can you run a business without understanding the basic fundamentals that go into that business, such as the contribution margins, your ROAS, right? Your turns on inventory. And if we're speaking a foreign language to you right there, like we need to do some deeper dives into this. So I guess my question would be for you, Bill, if somebody is like, yeah, hey, that's me. I have some issues. I can't see the real profitability of my business. I don't know that I trust my accounting statements. What's your first recommendation for them to get that corrected?
Yeah. So a couple common things I see that introduce error into people's financial statements, or variability or confusion to where they don't feel like the month-to-month results you kind of reflect how their business is doing. The number one biggest thing is around cost of goods sold and inventory accounting. Because for two reasons. One, this is probably one of your biggest line items, right? It's 20, 30% of sales, probably. Right. And so that's a big number. It's probably the biggest single number besides advertising. Advertising is pretty easy to do accounting for because they charge your credit card and they charge it pretty quickly, which means that credit card charge probably hits in the month that you spend the ads. Inventory, totally different, right? You might buy a whole bunch of inventory in February and then you drip it out over 5, 6, 7 months as you sell all the different SKUs, right? And I see the first major error I see is people on cash basis for inventory, which means that if you buy, coming up here in January, you buy $100,000 worth of inventory, they just put $100,000 in COGS right there in January, and then no COGS in February. If you're doing that cash basis, your financial statements will never make any sense because January will look terrible and February will look great and March will look great. And so you've got this huge lumpiness in the COGS line. So that would be called cash basis accounting, right? When the cash goes out the door, that's when it hits the P&L. You can't be doing that. If you're a serious business, we got to grow up past cash accounting. Like it might be fine if you're a service business, but in e-commerce, we're all inventory businesses. A huge portion of your balance sheet and your net worth is sitting on the shelf of your 3PL. And if you're not accounting for that properly, you're flying completely blind. So if you are not on real accrual basis for accounting or for cost of goods, you got to get there right away. What the hell is accrual accounting? Like I've run into a lot of people that kind of don't know what that is. And in short, accrual accounting means you match the timing of revenue and the cost associated with generating that revenue. So if you buy a whole bunch of inventory in January and you don't sell it all in January, you don't want to recognize the expense of all that inventory in January. You want to only recognize expense for what you sell in January. And then later in February, when you sell some more stuff, you want to recognize the expense of some more stuff, and so on and so forth. You can see how this gets really complicated because you got to keep track of the cost of everything you bought and when you sold it and when you sold each thing. Cannot be done by hand. you need integration. So we can come to that in a little bit. But broadly, you got to be on accrual. So when you buy something, you got to capitalize it on the balance sheet and then drip it onto your P&L over time as you sell it. So that's the first place. If you're not on accrual, you got to get on accrual.